Welcome back to the video C1 exam preparation. Today we're looking at part 6 reading, and we're going to have a look at some strategies for doing this part of the reading exam. Let's get straight to it. Okay, this is our reading question that we're going to have a look at today, part 6. Okay, and we know that there are going to be 4 people talking about one particular topic. Okay, in this case here we have 4 people, A, B, C, and D, and each one of them is talking about living in London. Okay, London is the central topic. And there are 4 questions that we need to answer, and we're going to use the different parts for our answers. Okay, and what we're going to do here, first of all, is look at the 4 questions that we have. Okay, and we're going to highlight the keywords in each. Okay, and then go back to the 4 different parts of the text and find those particular parts. Okay, so let's go through just quickly and highlight the different parts that we've got in the different questions. Okay, so question 37 expresses a different view from the other 3 commentators regarding the housing situation in London. So all 4 of the people will talk about housing situation in London. Okay, so that's going to be our keyword for 37. Okay. In 38, shares C's opinion on London's public transport system. So this is our keyword or keywords from 38, London's public transport system. 39, has a different view from A on the multicultural nature of London's population. So this is our keyword group here. And in 40, shares A's opinion on the inequality of wealth prevalent in London. So inequality of wealth in London is our keywords here. Okay, so let's look at our 4 sets of, let's look at our 4 different people and see what they say about each. Okay, we can see here in 37 that all 4 of them have an opinion about the housing situation, but there is one who has a different view from the other 3. Okay, so we're just looking for one who basically says something completely different to the other 3. So let's get into those. Let's have a look at that. Let's just remove this part here first. So we're looking for the housing situation. And let's look at A first of all and see what A talks about in relation to housing in London. So it's a cruel city, quick walk from the glassy money temples to the one of the, right, rundown estates is definitely about housing. Okay. What you need to know most about the harshness and the problem. So we can see here how this is quite negative in what she's talking about. Harshness is a particular sort of negative word. Depressing, she goes on to talk about. Okay, so we can see here how she's basically insulting amount. So we can see here she's sort of really sort of quite negative about it. Overcrowded, overheated, unreliable. So she's not sort of very happy at all. And then we've got something about the landlords. We've got something about the rent and the fact that the places that you live in London are extremely small and will cost you more than a palace outside. So we've got quite a few things here about the housing situation. Okay, definitely sort of negative. Okay, so let's just remove that for a second. Now we've highlighted those parts. Let's look at B and see what he says about London and the housing situation. Inventive city, happily embraced, cycling, walking, 1-bed flats further away from the center. This is about housing. The trend has been to move further out, but it doesn't need to be like that. So this is about housing. Some of the most interesting work going on in London is around the politics of scarcity. We need to release spare space, new models of flexible living. So flexible living and co-housing, disparities between haves and have-nots. Okay, so this is the only parts here. He talks about housing. And I think we can sort of see here there's a big difference between the sort of negativity in A with sort of slightly more positive in B. Okay, this may well be important. Okay, perhaps A is going to be our answer, or perhaps B is going to be answer, depending on how C talks about her particular part. Okay, so let's just come back to that in a minute. Let's remove this first, and we'll come back. Anna, let's talk about Anna. What does she say? 1 second, let me just choose my... Right, okay. So apart from the fact that most people no longer afford to live here, okay, so we've got this about housing. Seems to be a sad conformity. Okay, that's not about housing, but that's tribal conservative, across the multitude of transport modes, congestion charge. So it's really just about this first part here. Most people can no longer afford to live here. So again, this is sort of expensive. If you're trying to find somewhere in London, you're going to be paying for the privilege. Okay, so this sort of agrees very much with A. Okay, so perhaps B is going to be our answer. So let's just remove that for a moment and have a look at D. Let's see what D says. I don't get the fascination with London's right. So we've got definite negativity, decrepit, overpriced, falling to pieces. Okay, so we can definitely see here that our answer is going to be, I think, B. Let me just see if we see anything else here. Right, totally dysfunctional stock of properties not fit for modern day living. Right, so this is a definite conclusive answer here that the answer is B. Okay, let's just go back and just look at that again. We've got A talking about the sort of the rundown estates, depressing harshness. Okay, B talks about London in quite a positive way, happily embraced. He talks about here. So I think B definitely is going to be the sort of happy ones. The others are going to be negative. Anna, no longer afford to live here. Okay. And then we've got D, John, and he talks about decrepit housing stock. So in our answer for 37, it's definitely going to be B. Okay, because B has a different view from the others. Okay, let's look about the London transport system. Okay, again, quite a few of them talked about London transport, and we need to find out first of all what C says. Okay, because whatever C says, we need to find a similar opinion. So let's look at C first and see what C has to say. Let's go back and let's choose our options. Okay, to no longer afford to live here, big bearded trousered hipster phenomenon, cribble. Right, okay, we have this sentence here. I do love the eclectic London transport system, though. Multitude of transport modes, the whole city is pretty much anti-car. So very much a positive about the London transport system. We need to find the same sort of positivity from the other people. So let's just remove that and go to A. A was quite negative in quite a few things, the rundown estates, and then we can see here, public transport system. Let's just highlight all of that. Public transport system, it isn't just the trains are overcrowded, overheated, unreliable, it's that you have to pay such an assaulting amount for the privilege of traveling. So this is not the same as C. Okay, so let's remove that, and our answer is not going to be A. What about B? Let's just choose again. London's an endlessly inventive, we happily embraced, right, this looks like going to be our answer. Okay, happily embraced London Underground, overground, cycling, walking. Yes, so this has to be the answer, because if you remember, C talked about, I do love the eclectic transport system. And B, we happily embraced, well, these are essentially synonymous with the words they've used. Let's just check D just to make sure that we haven't made a mistake. Right at the end, you can see here how he says, why else would you need to pay such a ridiculous sum just to get from A to B on late-running museum piece transport system? So again, negativity, talking about the transport. So our answer has to be B again, okay? Because B shared the same opinion as C, okay? So let's go back and put here B for 37 and B for 38, okay? Right, now we're going to look at A and talk about the multicultural nature of London's population. And A, we need to find someone who has a different view to this. So let's look first of all at the comment made from A. Let's just move that back. 1 second. I need to move the screen this way. Okay. So let's see what A says about the multicultural element. Where were we looking here? Right. Okay. So right at the end of A, we have these two lines here. And she says, I do rejoice in the internationalism of my city. The way I learned so much about different cultures and cuisines just by attending a local street party. So she is very much in favor of this multicultural aspect of the city. So this is what we are trying to look for. And we're looking for a different view of this. Okay, so let's check A, sorry, and see what A says about this topic. Perhaps he doesn't say anything, but let's just check anyway. Inventive city, politics of scarcity, release more spare space, flexible living, disparities between have and have nots. You need to be born with a silver spoon. People are in the process of making it or have already made just in different places on a glide. So he doesn't talk about anything related to this idea of international part of the city, this multicultural aspect. So it's not B. Let's look at C. People no longer afford to live in London. Okay, what is this? The big beard, tight trousered hipster phenomenon, for instance, is essentially tribal and conservative. Well, this is very different to what the person talked about in A, and she talked about multiculturalism, internationalism, and here we have tribalism and conservative. Okay, so this is essentially everyone is the same. Okay, that's not what A says. That would definitely be a different view. Okay. I don't think anything else is mentioned here about that. So it could be that our answer is C. But let's just check D to make sure and see what we've got. All of this talk of old world charm, character conservation areas, money to burn on heating, run down gritty areas attract outsiders from all walks of life. So he essentially here is talking very much in the same way as A. Because that's who's drawn here, unless we're talking about the rundown, gritty areas that attract outsiders from all walks of life. If it weren't for them, this would be a dull place to live. So he basically says, I love the way they colonize an area with pop-ups, cafes, and art space. So this is very much agreement with A, okay? Because A talked about this idea of multiculturalism, internationalism of my city, she talks about, okay? So our answer has to be C. Okay, so if you want, we would definitely put, let's just remove the highlighting, C for 39 here. Okay, okay, let's finish off with question 40. We need to find what A says about this inequality of wealth, which is prevalent or common in London. Okay, so we're looking for someone who has the same opinion as A. So let's check A first of all and see what A says. Let's just move up. Right. Okay. And A, right at the beginning, we have, let me just choose this here. Right. Okay. So A, right at the beginning, talks about this London being a cruel city. We've got the steel and glass money temples of the financial district, close to rundown estates. Okay, so this is going to give us our the sort of haves and the have-nots, or the people that have money, the people that don't have money. And we got this question here about harshness and problems. So let's see if there's anything else that they talk about. And also the fact of sort of, if you want to live in London, you're going to have to sort of spend a lot of money in your accommodation. Right. Okay. So this is what we're looking for. We're looking for something that has a similar opinion to this. Okay. Uh, let's look at B and see what B says about housing. I think B just talked about that you need to be sort of quite rich. He had this expression here about being born with a silver spoon in your mouth, which basically means you have to be sort of a bit lucky. Yes, he talks about here disparities between the haves and the have-nots, but he says it's the place to be if you want to be an entrepreneur. So inequality of wealth, I don't think we have in B. Let's just remove some of these things here and look at C and D. Right. What have we got? We got these, the hipsters, eclectic transport, congestion charge, parking attendance, penalty notices. Okay, again, there's nothing here about inequality. So the answer has to be D. Let's just see what D says. Let's move it up. Right, what have we got? Decrepit housing stock, overpriced and falling to pieces, old world charm, character conservation areas. Right, okay, so we've got the people who are multimillionaires, money to burn, and we've also got the people who populate the rundown, gritty areas as well. Right, the system favors perhaps the people living off their inheritance, but we've definitely got the sort of two different parts of the people with money and the people without money. Okay. Although she talks about here, or he talks about it here in a sort of slightly more positive light. Whereas A sort of talked about it quite negatively, that it seems sort of terribly unfair. Um, yes, you've got the sort of contrast between the sort of money in the City of London and the rundown estates, the harshness and the problems. But the question indeed was about this question about inequality, which is prevalent or common in London. So the D answer here for D would have to be my answer. Okay, so if we had to sort of give you some final tips for this part of the exam, I would definitely say highlight the keywords in each of the questions. Okay. Once you've highlighted the keyword in each of the questions, go through the questions systematically. Start with the first one. Look for, you saw the sort of types of questions we had. Either there was one who had a different opinion to the other three, or sharing the opinion of A, or having a different opinion to sort of C, for example. So the question types are really sort of quite similar. Okay. But certainly highlighting each of the questions, going through them sort of systematically. Okay. The important part for part six is that it only gives you sort of 8 points. Okay. There are other parts of the reading exam which will give you more points. These should be done first. Okay. And I would suggest that you leave sort of part six to the end, because you will only get sort of 8 points for the work that you do. Okay, so hope you found this of interest. Hope it was of use. Subscribe, click and like, okay, and we'll see you again for another video. Okay.